So welcome to tonight's webinar. We're going to hold a webinar on the radiation from electromagnetic frequencies. And this is one of the most important webinars that I will ever do, because electromagnetic frequency radiation has 10,000 studies showing that it's harming humans, okay? This is beyond proved, more than almost any other thing that we know is harmful. But there's one factor that is rarely talked about, and I'm going to highlight it tonight, and it's really the scariest factor and the most important factor of all. There is a crisis going on because of these electromagnetic frequencies, the ones that are in your house, in your neighborhood, in your school. There is a crisis beyond a crisis, and I use the word devastation on this page because that's the appropriate word to use here, and I'll show you why. So here we go, if I can get this clicker to go on here. There we go. So EMFs and reproductive devastation, okay, that may threaten human life like nothing ever has before. Back in the 80s, people were scared about the Soviet Union and the United States being in Cold War and the possibility of a nuclear bomb going off and blowing up half the world, the entire world. That's a crisis. That's a major crisis. I believe that the human race is facing, since then, this is the biggest crisis since the most scary thing that you can imagine. The problem is, this crisis is not only a threat, like that threat of nuclear war was and maybe still is a small bit, but it's literally happening now according to the science and the studies and visual things that you will see in this video. This presentation tonight, we're going to cover the bioeffects of EMFs from household common EMFs. The most dangerous effect of all, which I started talking about, what proof we have of this, and then how to protect yourself, okay? A little bit about that. Now, always have to say this, disclaimer, this presentation is not meant to treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Our advice is for educational purposes only, and here we go. And you can read the next paragraph about where we get our information from. We're kind of passing it on from scientists to you guys. Now, the bioeffects quickly of EMFs consist of the main ones: fatigue, sleep issues, headaches here, immune system imbalances. You can read the other ones. Now, DNA damage and cellular damage down there at the bottom, if you don't have any symptoms from these EMFs that you can recognize, trust me, you're getting those, okay? You can't avoid those. I've seen over 50 studies proving that your cell phone and other EMFs in your house cause DNA damage. So that's happening. But beyond this, the big red arrows are pointing to what we're going to cover tonight. And this is a dire warning that you should tell everybody that you know about, especially pregnant moms. Now, the most dangerous one is the reproductive danger, okay? But why is this the biggest threat? Because we could be literally extinct if we don't stop this train, okay? Let's look at some evidence about what I'm talking about. Now, some of you guys that are working with us may have seen this clip, and it's just going to be a small clip, but this is worth watching again. It's just like 2 minutes here.
So you were talking, you had a scientist that's made some comments about this.
Yeah, this is my favorite scientist. He's a physicist. To introduce him, Barry Trower. Okay, he was a retired physicist from the Special Forces military in Britain. So he's got a pretty good title. Yeah. He retired. His job in the military was to use microwaves as weapons. Okay, microwaves, that's the frequency that comes off cell phone, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, baby monitors, Google Home, like pretty much all the information going through the air that's converting into video and audio is probably a microwave. So he used this frequency range as weapons. So he comes out, and I'd like, if we have that clip, I'd love to play the intro.
We have a clip of him, so let's play that really quickly.
What do you think about wireless technologies used in schools and kindergartens and children using cell phones?
It is incredibly dangerous, incredibly stupid, and I think the people who authorize it should be locked away for the rest of their lives, because they shouldn't be walking around the planet. And the reason is that if I can use you as a young girl, if you are a young girl or a young teacher, the microwaves are affecting the eggs or the immature eggs, the follicles in your ovaries, 400,000 of them. The radiation is 10 times more dangerous to this DNA than any other DNA in the body. And nobody knows why, it just is. So your eggs are already irradiated and could produce a genetically damaged child if you have one. The biggest danger comes when you become pregnant, because your fetus has your damage if it is damaged by it. But in the fetus, for the first 100 days, it is forming, if it's a girl, its own immature eggs, because they're born with all of them, unlike boys who make sperms. They're born with all of their eggs. So what you are now doing is you are having a fetus inside you, and the eggs as they are forming have no protection, absolutely no cellular protection. They haven't developed it. So you are now irradiating what would be your grandchild. And because the baby in your fetus would be your child, and the eggs inside the fetus will be when this child grows up and has her child. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So it is your grandchild, and this is where the biggest danger is. It is in the grandchildren, which won't be born for another 30 to 40 years. That is where the big problem, and this has already been shown with animals who reproduce every few years. We already know this is going to happen. So the people putting Wi-Fi in schools today, I think they should be sent to jail, I really do, because they are going to cause this, and we don't know how many people it's going to affect, but we do know it's going to affect quite a few. They are going to affect the children to be born in 30 years' time.
Okay, so I'd like to summarize what we just heard. And this guy is a retired physicist from the Navy and Secret Service in Britain. Part of his job was to use microwaves, again, to repeat, comes off cell phones, Wi-Fi, all the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi stuff in your house. Use microwave as weapons. He is one of the premier experts in the field. He's retired, and he said, I'm not going to let the world just go flush down the toilet behind me. I'm going to speak up from what I've learned and what I know. And so I'm having a baby girl. My wife's pregnant, and she's due in January 9th. In the first trimester, my wife was pregnant. All the follicles that were forming that will become the eggs that our baby girl will be born with were all being made. In those 100 days, they don't have the ability to repair the DNA. There's 10 times the DNA damage happening to those eggs than to an adult's cells and DNA, okay? They're getting 10 times the damage that we're getting. They can't repair it because we repair almost 100% of our DNA damage. Every day we're repairing. That baby is not repairing it. So it's not only 100 times worse than the DNA damage we're getting, it could be 1,000, it could be thousands or more times worse because it doesn't heal, okay? And not only does it not heal, but it's permanent because it doesn't heal. So that we're not going to see the results of those eggs for another generation. So the damage that this EMF problem is causing people today really will not be seen, not tenfold, but in gigantic, huge amounts, according to famous scientists and common sense. What you're going to see, we're going to see this in 30 years. It's going to be too late by then, and I'll show you why. So this is an experiment. It's a reproductive study on mice. Mice reproduce, they have a gestation period of every 30 days. So we can see multiple generations of mice in just months, okay? Instead of waiting for people to generations, which is going to take years. So they put mice in a yard with cell towers around, much like this picture that I found of a school playground right next to a bunch of cell towers. The mice were in the yard. The yard was less than the FCC safety guidelines. So according to our country, it's quote unquote safe, right? So what happens? So in the first generation, these mice had lowered reproductive abilities. Not a surprise. The second generation of mice had even lower reproductive capabilities. The third generation of the mice could not reproduce at all, okay? Then they removed these mice from the yard and they still couldn't reproduce ever again. In other words, these changes seem to be permanent. And if you look at the fourth point here, it says, sounds a lot like Barry Trower's predictions. Maybe, I don't know if this is alarming to anybody else, but this is one of many things that is extremely alarming to me. If this literally happens to people, we better scream from the mountaintops, all of us, and warn people. So again, when that generation of mice were removed from the yard, they just didn't produce anymore. Now here's a real life situation. This is off the record. This is somebody who called me. They have a farm, they raise cattle, they artificially inseminate the cattle to produce prize-winning steers. At least they used to. They put very strong, this is way above average neighborhood power lines, but they're very strong power lines right down the middle of the farm. Okay, this was about, I think it was 100 feet from where they artificially inseminate the cows. Not a good scenario. So, and I do want to warn you that the pictures or videos, you know, are extreme. So if you have kids or whatever, you might want to not have them look for a while. You can listen instead. So the first set of offspring that these cattle were having, they had trouble reproducing. And by the way, this isn't a study. This is just somebody I know, okay, that has a farm that this happened to. The second sets of offspring were having discoloration. This is supposed to be a brown calf. And they're having discolorations like this calf. And the calves are not surviving. They're having major problems, okay? This is just the second generation as they're going. Furs being discolored, you know, strange things happening. Here's another one. This is a calf born that comes out with no hair. There were, I heard, very many deformities and strange things happening to these cattle. So it's kind of sad. These calves are not making it. They're coming out and they just don't make it. And they have weird things going on to them. And pretty soon, now they have 4 cows that can seem to be able to still produce a little bit. But 38 of 42 of the cows seem to be sterile and are not doing anything anymore. They can't even produce what the sad things you just saw. Now, the obvious question is, are humans being affected in the same way? Let's look at the facts. In this country and every other modern country with technology, men's sperm have now dropped below 50% of the amount of sperm that when I grew up. So I'm going to move that over. So in other words, from 1973 to 2011, and this has been in the news, men now produce less than half the sperm that we used to, okay? I'm scared to look what happened between 2011 now because the EMF situation just gets worse every year. The EMF studies and the facts are showing, and this is according to Bio Initiative and Dr. Martin Paul, and I go on and on, lowered sperm count, which we just showed, lower sperm motility. So even the ones that you do produce as a man can't swim as fast, can't swim as far, okay? Fewer eggs are being produced by females. The last thing on the list says lower levels of each of the type of sex hormones. Now, when you produce less of the hormones, what probably is not surprising is that they found in studies that there's a lower libido going on too, in general. Now, the wireless elephant in the room here, this is going to be another bit of evidence for humans. So there's something called an Open Innovation Lab, and Huawei, I think I'm saying that right, Huawei, is the major Chinese 5G techie company. Okay, they kind of were the first and the biggest rolling out 5G. They did a little experimental rollout to show off and showcase their 5G and other smart technologies in Germany, in this little town. And they did it for 6 months and just ended, months ago. Now, strangely, maybe a big coincidence, 9 months after that, 4 babies in this town and 3 in this town and 1 right borderline of this town came out with missing hands. Okay. Then after they came out, other people were coming out saying they had babies with strange deformities and things. Sounds strangely familiar to me. Now, could this be a coincidence? It could. It could have nothing to do with 5G. Maybe there's something in the water. Who knows? But when the scientists are saying that this could happen, and then we see evidence that maybe it's happening, it is sending off a gigantic alarm, because, again, by the time we find out that this is happening to a serious level, it's literally too late. Because once you fry all the grandkids so that they can't have babies, you can't back that up, because it seems in animal studies this may be permanent. So, a couple other facts. The reproductive rates, are called birth rates, for the first time in modern society, just in this last year, have now dropped below the replacement level. That means every family and every woman needs about 2.1 kids to sustain population rates. Okay, once you drop below that, population starts decreasing. That's never happened. Okay, this year is now happening. And you might say, well, people are waiting longer to have kids or whatever, but look at the other things going on, okay? Now here's a tale of, I call it the reproductive tale of 2 Asian countries. Now I got this information from Dr. Martin Paul in an amazing radio interview that he did. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, if you Google Dr. Martin Paul and the invisible force driving the sickness of technologically advanced studies, written at the bottom of the screen, you can listen to his talk on this. He talks about smaller Asian countries that introduced 5G, and in a very short time, their birth rates that used to be much better than our modern society here, which is already like tanking. They had, like Singapore, for instance, they dropped 31% in 1 year. 31% birth rate drop in 1 year. Okay, 31% birth rate drop in 1 year between 2016 and 17. Alarm going off. We have to pay attention to what the heck is going on. Anyway, other countries around that same time had drops that were between 10 and 30% in 1 year. And yet I barely hear this in the news. I hear the silliest, stupid stuff in the news. Meanwhile, we're not paying attention to huge, important things that are going on. Now, I'm just going to conclude. I'm going to wrap this up. Hopefully it's a powerful enough punch that people can start sharing this and paying attention. But in conclusion, I beg people not to wait to see if the scientists are correct. I beg people not to wait, because again, if we wait in this scenario, it's too late. So in my opinion, people should get a solution that they believe works. I found that. We found that. We have hundreds of testimonials and neat stuff to share, and studies that we show, and blood tests we show, and all this stuff that looks like our products really work. And probably the only company, and not even say probably, that actually completely works or almost completely works. Working 50% is no good for me. But in this scenario, I hope everybody tells everybody you care about, because this is serious. Remember, just because it's not on the news every week, don't think that this isn't a major, serious, actual, real thing. A lot of us listening have EMF meters, and they run around with them and they test them, and they see that these meters are screaming gigantic levels, gargantuan levels compared to what the scientists say cause biological effects. So some of us see the meter and we go, we get it. It's this invisible pollution is real. Okay, a meter screaming at you. It's real. Just because you can't touch it and feel it and see it, and they're not talking about it every day on the news. Please understand, it's going on right now. Okay, And I gotta pause before I forget. This technology, I love it all. I own it all. I'm talking to you on a laptop using Wi-Fi and a real strong router. And I got a cell phone here that is a great cell phone. And I love this technology. Now we'll continue to use it. But if I use it without fixing it, if I didn't believe I could fix this, if I didn't believe that I could remediate this in a way that is okay, there's no way I would use a cell phone. I'd go off the grid. That's a fact. So there is a silver lining to this story. I actually believe that we can live with this awesome technology that brings great things to the world and actually be safe. And I'm in the process of, knock on wood, finishing proving this. And then we can work with these companies one day and just fix everything as it shows up. And number 3 on this video, I say we should all be praying that huge changes are being made fast, honestly. Because I don't want my baby girl to be the last Hillis. You know, I would love to have grandkids one day. So get a solution that works, address the root cause of the problem. And I hope you listen to my next video, because the industry is driving me crazy, and the quote unquote EMF experts are driving me a little batty, because they're missing the boat. They're missing the root cause. They're dancing around issues, and they're chasing one main aspect with it, which is using the EMF meters to decide whether they're bad or not. And that is completely a partial story and completely deceiving and often wrong. So you have to be careful about that. But find somebody who can address the root cause of the issue. I believe we're doing that. And then please tell pregnant women to stay the heck away from this technology. Turn the routers off at night. Don't use a laptop on their belly. Stay away from the cell phone, or find something that they trust that works, which is what I did. And don't settle for solutions that work a little bit. Now, if you're wanting to see some of the science that we're quoting tonight, these are the sources. So again, Dr. Martin Pall, he's amazing because he's the one that discovered the mechanism in cells that gets messed up from these EMFs or reacts to the EMFs, called a voltage-gated calcium channel. It's a little sensor on all our cells. But if you look at this video, and to find this video, you can go to that website, the emfsoul.com/archive411, and I think that's the video on the very bottom of the page. And there's a bunch of other videos on that page that I think you'll find very useful. The bioinitiative.org is something that you should share with people who aren't believers, because that is scientists that don't sell anything. They don't have an agenda. They're not funded by anybody with an agenda. They're just trying to find out the EMF facts. And they have almost or just over 4,000 studies. Over 3,000 of them are conclusive. And in scientific terms, that means there's almost a guarantee that the EMF has caused the health conditions that are in that study. So that's a great place for the non-believer of this subject to go to, because you can spend 5 minutes on that page. And if you go to that page and you click on, I think you go to bioinitiative.org/conclusions, and that will take you right to a summary of 1,800 EMF studies. That's a powerful page for somebody who just wants to spend 5 minutes learning on the subject from non-biased scientists and figure out, holy cow, this is a real big deal. And then last, Barry Trower, who we showed a video of. You can definitely Google or go on YouTube rather and go to Barry Trower Wi-Fi in Schools. And I believe that'll wrap it up for tonight. This is a big issue. I hope you take it serious. Our website is emfsoul.com, as it kind of states in the middle of this page, minus the archive 411, which is, you know, one of the branches of our website. And I encourage you to come find out what's really going on and what I believe are real solutions that is not found anywhere yet, except for we're lucky enough to offer. So I hope you guys have learned something. I hope you spread the word, and thank you for attending.